Hello, I'm Laura McInerney, co-founder of Teacher Tapp, the app that asks thousands of teachers 3 daily questions so you can find out what's really going on the ground in schools. We've teamed up with the guys from InnerDrive to bring you InnerTapp, where we look at what teachers are thinking and what the research is saying about key topics in education. Today, we're unpacking EdTech. What's used, what works, and what gets quietly ignored. Because, let's be honest, EdTech can be brilliant, but it can also be clunky, patchy, and just sit there gathering digital dust. So what's actually happening in classrooms right now? Let's start with the basics. How many students are working on devices like phones or laptops every lesson? Despite the hype, only 15% of primary and 20% of secondary schools use one-to-one devices in their schools. Where technology is used, it's mostly mobile units that are shared around. So that's the case for 83% of primary schools and in 54% of secondaries, though secondary schools do also have, usually, IT rooms. What's interesting is that the figures have barely changed in years. The pandemic was not at all the technological leap that many people thought it would be. Even when devices are available, only 54% of schools say that their Wi-Fi is reliable across the whole building. The government has said it wants to improve the internet in schools, but we expect the rollout will be slow. If you are lucky enough to be using technological products in schools, how do you know if they're any good? Back in 2019, 79% of teachers said they'd want proof something worked before they bought an EdTech product, but now that's gone up to 87%. So teachers are getting more cautious, not less. There's also the problem that half of teachers say they're unlikely to believe the claims made by EdTech companies. That is slightly better than in 2019, but only just. It also seems the longer you've been in the job, the less likely you are to trust a sales pitch. Those in the job for 20 or more years were the most likely to say they were sceptical of tech companies. Perhaps this is because we become more reluctant to use new technologies as we age, but also we've seen a lot more go wrong. The most common tech tools teachers are using are interactive whiteboards. 74% of teachers have them in their classrooms and they use them regularly. Whether pupils will be using a device in a lesson can vary depending on what they're attending. While no subject had a majority of teachers reporting that they use devices with students in every single lesson every single day, it does seem that humanities and English were the least likely to incorporate them, while subjects like arts and modern foreign languages embrace their use more enthusiastically. However, many teachers like their technology with a bit less battery charging. For example, 2/3 of teachers regularly use mini whiteboards, especially in primary and in subjects like languages, science, and even PE. But the all-important question, where do they keep the whiteboard pens to go with those mini whiteboards? Well, the most common answer is on their desk. Luckily, not everything needs a login. This is what's happening in schools, but what does the research suggest are the opportunities to exploit and the traps to avoid when it comes to EdTech? Let's hand over to Bradley from InnerDrive to find out.
Many students say that using technology as part of their learning makes it more engaging and enjoyable for them. For example, students using iPads often say they feel more motivated and that they participate more in class. Interestingly, one study found that students using tablets are actually more likely to communicate with one another and help each other solve problems. However, research shows that when students use devices like laptops and phones during class, they often split their attention between the lesson and unrelated tasks like texting or browsing. This switching back and forth overloads the brain's working memory, leaving fewer mental resources available for learning. As a result, students who multitask tend to write fewer notes, remember less, and perform worse on their tests. In a similar vein, another study found that students using laptops often open dozens of unrelated tabs during their lesson, leading to poorer concentration and weaker understanding of the material. And it's not just their own focus that gets affected. Research suggests that when one student gets distracted, inattention can spread. This in the research is known as attention contagion. Another potential downside of tablets and laptops is that evidence suggests that students find it harder to pick out specific details in each passage when they read the material in a digital format compared to on paper. What about when it comes to note-taking? Because laptops and tablets are often used to do this. And it's easy to understand why. Typing is quicker, digital notes are easier to organise, and you can share or edit them anytime. But quicker doesn't always mean better. Research shows that while students take more notes when typing, these are often copied word for word without them doing too much thought about what they're actually writing. This kind of passive note-taking can actually make it harder for students to remember what they've been taught. By taking notes by hand, because it's slower, students have to think harder about what parts to include and often have to summarise it in their own words. This act means they're actually more likely to remember the content. So that's a bit about how students are using technology in their learning. But what about when it comes to teachers using it as part of their teaching? Let's look at one popular tool, PowerPoint. Despite being one of the most popular technological tools used in lessons, it is interesting to take a moment to reflect on how little time is often given in training to what makes a good PowerPoint slide. Somewhere along the way, words on a PowerPoint slide became a lesson script and not a prompt for deeper learning. In one fascinating study, researchers found that when slides have too many words on them, not only do students not remember them, they don't even pay attention to them in the first place. Linked to this, other researchers found that when we have excessive animations and sounds as part of our PowerPoint, it can be really distracting, especially if those animations and sounds aren't integral to the material being presented. Given how many hours teachers spend preparing PowerPoint slide decks, this offers pause for thought as if it's really good use of time. For every minute spent, you want to be confident that it's going to lead to a learning gain, whereas the truth is, in many cases, it might actually lead to a learning loss. Technology in the classroom isn't going away, and nor should it. It does offer us some great opportunities for learning. The key is using it well, and that means not putting the cart before the horse. The focus should always be on what problem is this solving, and not how can I find a way to use this technology in my lesson. A common theme emerging from the research is that for technology to be used well, we need to ensure we know what students are focusing on and that they're thinking hard about the material being taught. If not, chances are it may look good and engaging on the surface, but may lead to a shallow and superficial form of learning.
EdTech doesn't fail because the teachers don't care. It fails when the basics aren't in place, like Wi-Fi access and the trust in the tools. It's also about using the right tool at the right time for the right job. Teachers are cautious, and rightly so. They want evidence, they want things to work, and they want support when they don't. Until then, the mini whiteboard might still win.